Okay, so here we go. We're going to start with the forward and back plane motion. So we start off with just taking a very simple lunge, but without dropping the back knee down, but rather just taking a lunge forward and driving this front knee forward. Now, if your heel comes off the ground, that's okay. Don't worry too much about that. But try to go with the heel down to see what kind of mobility you have, and also with the knee, or the heel, sorry, up, and seeing what kind of mobility you have. And we're going to do this on both sides, so on this side and on this side. And what you might find is as you lunge out with this side, a bit more restricted, can't get through the hip, whereas when you lunge out with this side, it feels a little bit easier to get through, or vice versa. If there is pain or discomfort during any of these movements, put a note down. Obviously, do not go through the full motion, just make a note of which plane and which foot, right or left, was causing the main issue. And where is quite a good idea as well. So was it in the back, the knee, the ankle, or the hip? Once you've done that, we're then going to add to this by throwing our hands into hand reaches. So this will accentuate, make this more in terms of how much hip extension and how much knee extension and how much upper extension, back extension that you require. So this one, we're going to go into this position here and then come back. Again, other side, into this position here and come back. And you can repeat that a couple of times to really get an idea of where you have the restrictions. And of course, again, if there's any pain, put a note down. Our second one is still staying in this forward and back motion, but this time we're going to take a backward step. So we're going to take a backward step here and come back, backward step here, come back, see how far you can go. Sometimes you'll find that this side or one side goes really far back and the other side not so much. You may feel one hamstring a little bit more. Then we're going to take the hands and drive the hands down and see what that feels like through here. And whether you have any restrictions, you might find that you go back into this position, you can't really hold it, and you're falling over because you don't have the mobility in this right hip or in the spine. So that's the first one. The second is to go side to side. So these motions are pushing yourself out into what we call the frontal plane. So we're going to start off with taking just a normal lunge out to the side, like you're doing a groin stretch of your inner groin, and seeing how that feels across this side, and then going the other way and seeing how it feels going across to the other side. To make that accentuate a little bit more movement through there, we're going to have the hands up, we're going to go across the opposite side, see how much range you get out of this shoulder and out of the spine, and then across to the other side as well, see how much range you can get out of this side of the spine. Now it's really important that we look at the upper part of the spine, and that's because it's very important with walking and running. Think about taking a left foot step, your pelvis and your hips go one way and your shoulders go the opposite direction. So it's quite important to see what ranges you have in your shoulders and also what rotation you have in your shoulders. The next step in that same direction is across your feet here. So you can take a step across, see how much range you've got, and then a step across this side, see how much range you've got. And then to add to that, a hand reach one side and a hand reach the other side, and see what kind of ranges you have. You will notice that one side feels a lot easier, or one side feels a lot more restricted. We're then going to finish off with the rotational steps. So with the rotational lunge steps, we're going to start off with the forward one, which is rotating round the corner one side. It's quite an important one. It checks your hip restriction, and then also the other side as well, to see how your movement is over to the other side. Then you can add to that with the hand motions. So we're going to go in one side and then we go the other side, see what kind of range of motion you've got through the upper body and through the hips at the same time. You can see how interconnected now we are working, and how the body works right the way through up into the neck even. Then you've got the external rotation lunge. So this is this way. So rotating round the corner, seeing how far you can get your pelvis round through here. And then the same thing with the hands, seeing how far you can get round the corner. And of course, noting down any restrictions, pain or discomfort, and the same thing going the opposite way towards this side, so opening up, and then using the hand rotations to see how far you can get around the corner. Now, Once you've done that, once you've done all those 6 different lunges with those hand reaches, you will begin to create a map of your movement. You'll be able to see which parts of your body were more restricted, and you'll also be able to know which planes of motion which were more restricted. And that's the most important part. Which plane of motion was the most toughest for you, or which one caused you more pain and discomfort? Now, we're not going to focus on that particular plane of motion. What we're going to do is we're going to focus on the other 2 successful planes to help the one that was more restricted or more painful. So let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, this sideways plane motion as you drive the hips across this way felt quite tight, restricted, and may even brought on a little bit of pain around the hip or around the lower back. How can we use the other 2 planes to help? Well, if you don't have back pain, you can use hand drivers. So we're going to stay static in this particular plane of motion, and we're going to use our hands to reach at different points. So reaching forwards and back, and you really get a nice stretch through the groin here to help you in this particular plane of motion. Forwards and back, or rotation. So in, and as you go out, you really feel that groin stretching through there, and then here, and then feeling that stretch through the groin through there. So using your hand reaches to help you in this frontal plane or this side to side plane. If you do have back pain, you can just stick to your pelvis. So you can work in the pelvis alone. So if you try to give yourself a little bit of a knee bend there, a little bit of a stretch in that groin, you can use your forward and back drives. Again, feeling nice stretch through the groin there. And then also your rotational drives as well, so in rotation through there. And then retest yourself, so take a walk and retest. How does it feel as you come across to this side? Does it feel a lot looser? Has it cleared up? How is the pain? Does it feel worse, or does it feel much, much better? You can do that with every single plane of motion, regardless of whether it's the forward plane here, where you can't really get enough extension through this back hip. Well, you can use your side to side motions, and you can use your rotational motions to help you get a little bit more of some range. This is a very good starting point to understand the restrictions you have in terms of mobility. Then we can move on to stability, and we can even be a bit more specific. So for example, in the walking position, we can start to add a few pivots in those ranges and see how you get on with that as well. And then add the hand reaches in there as well to see if we can give you back the motion and mobility so that you can feel the freedom of movement.